Thank you, Mansour, for kind words, and also thank you so much to the rector for her very moving presentation this morning. I think that sets the stage very well. But I also want to recognize Ambassador Fritjof. Is he here? Because if you talk about the embassy, you should also remember, he was actually the first to put embassy funding into this program in 2005, I believe. He may be coming back later. I've been looking at this picture, and I know I only have 10 minutes, but I've been looking at this picture and reflecting on that in the context of where we are today. This is a historical picture. There's no place in Khartoum that's as tidy, nice, quiet, calm as that picture shows, and it's from April. The destruction, and I've been there, is total. Absolutely total. So 60 years, this is the biggest crisis that Sudan has ever been through, hopefully can go through it, in the history of the modern state. And you go back to the, to the Egyptian invasion, 2021, modern state 56 and so on. There's never been a situation where the destruction of the whole country, not just parts of it, but the whole country, is as deeply. And it's not just the infrastructure, university, but it's also the social structure, the social fabric, and it'll take time to recover. It's very interesting as a historian. I was thinking that, if it hadn't been for a twist of fate, I would have been sitting down there and listening to somebody else make this presentation, and I would have given a paper on, say, can Islamic banking survive this crisis? I will never do that paper, but anyway, I'm glad to be here. And again, thanks for this. As I said, this is the deepest crisis the Sudan has been in. We are struggling to find a way forward, but of course, in a 60-year perspective, we will find a way forward. And we're also here now to celebrate what has been a very important and meaningful and significant and also historic collaboration. In Bergen, and I know I lived in Bergen, so I know how people think here. They always, the center of the universe is Bergen. So of course, it's the longest running collaboration for the University of Bergen. But I also think it's the oldest and longest running collaboration with any Norwegian, between an African institution and any Norwegian institution. And I doubt that there are many similar international collaborations around. There could be maybe some with some American universities and some British universities, but I think there are very, very few. So while I understand the Bergen-centric perspective, you could actually strengthen that by saying that it's bigger than just the collaboration with here. 60 years. And those who have read this kind of brief history is actually very interesting because it shows how unique this collaboration is. Starting, of course, with Fredrik Bach having an academic focus, but then branching out. And just from a historical point of view, how was it financed throughout? And then why is it now, at the end of it, the embassy that comes in, but there's been so many phases to it. Another thing that would be extremely interesting to see the production of research throughout and how that has changed and is reflecting. Here is Ambassador Fritjof, so we should recognize him as well. But so how the changes to Norwegian university system has impacted on the research produced, and there was a big drop after the changes that led to the masters. When we had the Hovedfag and so on, you would spend, any Hovedfag student would go and spend 1 year in the Sudan. In fact, the saying was that no Sudanese family was complete if there wasn't this Norwegian anthropologist in the room. And then maybe some families were lucky to have a historian on board as well. But anyway, that was how it was, and that was why it became so good and so solid. And I was happy to be part of it. There's then two things I want to say that are what's very interesting about this collaboration over time. One was that the emphasis on applied research. And that made a lot of sense to me when I was still a researcher. After I became a diplomat, it became more problematic because we do speak different languages. And no diplomat, no policymaker has the time to read anything that's more than 3 pages on a good day. You know, and I remember the first time I went to Machiakos to write a report, it was 10 pages. And I don't think it's ever been read. So from a historical point of view, it's interesting, but it's something about this applied. But there are, you know, if anybody succeeded in this, it was the Bergen people here. And in fact, you then produced some people that were useful in the ministry, not just me, but also Kjell Hødnebø, who had a very significant role at a particular point, also a historian and so on. The other thing that I think is extremely significant about this collaboration is how we worked, how we worked together. It was always, as the director was saying, it was very collaborative. It was the basis of a partnership, and we were equal. And I remember when I have a very vivid memory of the first time I was introduced to the Bergen-Khartoum collaboration, because I was then looking to do my mellomfag in history, and I wanted to do non-European history, and then Sudan was kind of, it was an obvious choice. So I went to see Professor Fahy and knocked on his door, and I opened the door, and he was sitting there with Ali Saleh, with Abu Salim, with Anders Björkelo, and a few others, and they were working on documents. It was a total mess. You know, everybody was in there trying to understand what these documents meant. So it was this fantastic example of collaboration, of sharing, and working together. The word donor, I think, never came into it. The word, you know, and I saw this is actually in the note, capacity building in relation to Abdul. It wasn't capacity building. It was somebody very talented that was given an opportunity to work, to go back. It was this partnership aspect. And why does Norway have this role in this political process? Well, because we learned how to work with Sudanese on an equal basis. It's absolutely clear that we work differently with the Sudanese than the British do. They have a different history also. We work very differently with the Sudanese from the Americans, very different. We work together. And because we're working together, we know each other, we trust each other, we get access, we get analysis, we get everything that we need in these political processes to actually punch, in our case, above our weight. And it's been like that now since Machiakos in 2002, and I think it will continue. So those aspects to it are extremely important and something that we need to protect going forward. Another dimension of it that you know is very important to me, and Fridtjof will confirm this. This collaboration is appreciated and by everybody in the Sudan, including governments and plural. So they kind of provided a space for us to work, do what we wanted to do, promoting the values we wanted to promote, but in a safe space. Because while Sudan, of course, is always merits research, because we always want to spend money into that. There's also, we have to argue differently for the politicians, because they're not so necessarily so keen on Sudan as we are. But what we can argue is that by doing what we're doing now, we're in fact meeting policy objectives of the government. For instance, we want countries like the Sudan to be in charge of their own future. Now, how can a country meet the challenges of the present and the future without having people that can study, analyze, study, meet with partners on an equal basis? You've got to invest in higher education. You've got to train. You've got to have these networks. That's absolutely critical to move forward, to meet the challenges of the future, especially now as going forward, and especially now there's been an exodus of the middle class from the Sudan. How can then the country meet the challenges of the future when the people are not there? So this is something I'll return to as I'm going to conclude, and it won't be too long before I conclude. But so there has been this Sudan focus that's in itself is important, but there's been this other policy objective for the government, investing in the future of the Sudan by investing in higher education. Another thing is not, I'm a historian, there's plenty of anthropologists here, nothing wrong with us, but we are not the only important people in the world. So, and what this also was so unique about this collaboration, it was history, it was anthropology, it was geography, was botany, it was archaeology, it was the total package. And what made the seminars in Bergen so stimulating, so fruitful, was that people came, and exchanged view. So the applied research was also applied in the sense of reaching out to others that could inform decisions. I think this is very well described in the pamphlet that was written for this conference, and should be maybe revised a little bit and then made into a publication and put on record, because it's very, very interesting. This no, a little bit about why the embassy has chosen to. I said a little bit about it, already. But the peace process, the networks, we're still at it. We're still committed. We're working on it. But it's only one dimension to it. It's taught us a lot, and we need to take it forward. However, one weakness, and this is something we discussed a lot with Mansour as we were preparing this phase of the program, was that we know, and there'll be no Fahi lecture today, so he would, very important to his work is to show that Sudan is more than Khartoum. It's the center periphery. There's a big issue in Norway, it's a bigger issue in Sudan, as we've seen recently. There was a bias in the old program, too much focus on Khartoum, too much focus on the center, too much focus on people that was very easy to collaborate with. That collaboration became more difficult after 89. But also after 89, there was new changes to the universities and new institutions coming up and so on. And then you had the revolution in 2019 that changed Sudan a lot. So it was very important as we were planning this phase that the program would reflect the changing Sudan by bringing in institutions from elsewhere. And I know Mansour and others took that very serious and started traveling, and that is critical, especially now that we're looking at a totally different Sudan. The program needs to be able to meet the challenge of the present. They need to be able to address and come up with constructive answers to dealing with the current situation, so that again, Sudanese will be able to be in charge of their own future by having the knowledge about the present and ideas for the future. So it's got to be beyond Khartoum, it got to be in the whole region, even if it's difficult. And this is where now I think we need to do more capacity building than we used to in the past, because the capacity just isn't there. So we need to do that, find ways of doing it, even if it is very difficult. So where are we now? Well, as I said, we are in a place where this is history, but we have to continue. For the embassy, emphasis on Sudanese ownership, diverse ownership, bringing everybody together in this program, the whole country. And it's the Sudanese in the Sudan, first and foremost. But we know that most of you are now, at least the people that we normally deal with, are outside. So that's a challenge that we have to find a way to address constructively and also deal with constructively, so that this will not be a diaspora exercise, but it will be something that's very meaningful for the Sudan when the recovery starts. So that's going to be a critical part. Sudanese ownership. We got to, from the embassy, find a way where this is also useful for us in our daily work, but I think it will be through the networks we have, and when the recovery starts, that we can draw on the resources that are brought together in this program, so that we can deal with the challenges in a meaningful way. Also, that the partnership that we have, that I've talked about, will influence and decide what we prioritize and who we work with, how we work with it, and how we assess results and if necessary, change as we go along to make this Sudanese ownership even more meaningful. I think we have to also think long term now. 60 years, of course, we need to think long term. The recovery will be very slow, very, very difficult. So if you only have a 1 year commitment, you might as well not start. You've got to have a long-term commitment, because this will take a very, very long time to recover. But I think that in Norway, that's where Norway is, that is where the embassy is, at least as long as I am the ambassador. So we want to be a reliable partner. We want to build on the foundation that was laid here in Bergen, partnership, not as a donor, but as a friend and as a partner. We want to have Sudanese ownership in the Sudan. We want to be, working with you to reach what we can agree is the best political program that Sudan ever have. had. Freedom, peace, and justice. Huria, Salam, Adala. Pues?